Hello everyone, this is Jotto, and welcome to my Masters Tournament report. Yes, now Masters is always a very, very hectic time, and the end of the month this time was even more hectic because I also was visiting some of the members of my family, which means that I had basically no time to do any content whatsoever, which is why I haven't been streaming or making videos for like a week and a half. So yeah, so anyway. As usual with Masters, I did my ridiculous training schedule thing with my teammates. The people I tested with this time were uska, kreur, and Cloud. So my three teammates, and we played like 200 and something games, and tested pretty much everything, and we got our spreadsheet as well. And it paid off. I actually ended up going 4-0 and winning the first place, which was quite nice for me because the last ones have been 2-2. 3-1, 3-0, then a loss in the finals against Peacekeeper, and then finally managed to go the full 4-0, which I was very, very pleased with. Now, two other people ran my exact same lineup, which was, well, okay, give or take, same types of archetypes, which was uska and kreur. They ran the same lineup I was, and they both went 3-1, so it definitely was very, very successful. Now, before we start, some of these decks are not very well refined, or just really strange, because they're teched for certain strategies and conquests, since we sort of agreed ban Dominion. So if there's some weird stuff in them, that's usually why. So let's start with the first one, Implants. Wisdom Dominion Implants, to be exact. Now, this list is, okay, it's a little strange. Golems. Yeah, we'll get to that. But anyway, so Implants have been really, really strong. Mostly because of some of the recent additions in Slave Gladiator, which gives you a just massive board presence all at the same time, where you can just play a bunch of lower cost creatures now. Soul Flames helps a bit with hard removal because you can't run Helm in the two color versions without getting a bit awkward. And in general, the deck has just become more consistent over time, and it was always a kind of okay deck, and now it's a lot better. The deck actually did really, really well. I think I played it in 2 games, lost 1, won 1, I think. No, I played 3 games with it, and I won 2 and I lost 1. So, yeah, the deck did perform very well. It was one of the best performing decks in testing, so we knew people were going to run it, and it was very, very popular on ladder. So we were figuring everyone's going to run some form of implants, and we were no exception in that regard. Now, Coronis is pretty much the reason why this deck is so powerful. Being able to make Ravens for 2 mana constantly is absolutely insane against some decks, and you can bait out removal a lot. The Lifebound helps against Rage, and also against decks that just don't have removal, like Mono Order. The Ravens are just insane. So yeah, Coronis is really, really powerful, and is one of the reasons this deck even works. So why were we playing the Wisdom version? Well, the Sustain helps against a lot of mid-range creature decks, and also the extra defense from Force Mage Protector helped against Rage, and we wanted to target creature decks with our lineup because we could always ban Control, and the strongest creature deck overall was pretty much Implants, so we decided, well, we'll just ban that. So yeah, we decided ban Wisdom, and well, ban Dominion, and you usually get Wisdom as well with that in one shot, since both of those 2 decks use both of those colors. Now, some of the core additions, we got the normal stuff that makes Implants powerful. We got Spoil the Aristocrat, the 3/1 1-drop is really, really good. We've got Assassin, absolute MVP against some matchups, especially Angels, because you can put a grapple hook on this guy and keep pulling stuff back onto the front row. Already mentioned the Slave Gladiator. You've got Gnome Surgeon. Is absolute core for this deck because it lets you get implants over and over and over again. You just overwhelm your opponent with value and massive creatures. And Bloodseeking Mutant, also known as Windseeking Mutant, which allows you to kill small creatures and is just a nice threat. Also works quite well with the Hero Power Cathedral because you get extra weakness, emblems, and life gain from there. Now, as for the implants, Overcharger, +3/+3. Really, really hard to stop. The Unstoppable usually comes up in the fact that it allows you to get extra Raven counters, since your Ravens grow every time you hit them after activating the hero power. And Grapple Hook, only a 2-off because you don't need that many of these things. However, you can get them off Gnome Surgeon, and they're incredibly good. They allow you to pull stuff from the back row forward, and the big ones are Angels, and you put this on an Assassin, you can just rip their board apart. Now, as for the Wisdom Splash, we've got Library Guards, very, very good for sustain, and also just nice stats on the 4-drop. Protector. Now, Protector is incredibly good now. It went through a phase of not being very good, but it's very, very good now. The reason for it is because Protector's bad against Corruption. That's pretty much what it's bad against. It is bad against Corruption because it dies to Fumes, and the shield does less against Corruption. However, what's the other faction it's bad against? Well, Dominion. But you can ban Dominion. So we took out Dominion, and we thought, well, it's borderline broken against Order. Against Nature, it's really rough, because you don't have Landslide anymore, so you have to Tornado this thing, which is really awkward. And against Wisdom, it's also pretty good. And against Rage, you just shield your own stuff, and you put a shield on a Raven, and you probably win the game. So Protector is really, really good if you can ban other Dominion decks, and as a result, it's probably the best Wisdom card in the deck. Now, the Golems... Okay, this is weird. So, the Golems is basically so that you can go Spoiled Aristocrat, Slave Gladiator, Golem on turn 2 and get a massive board quickly, and it helps a lot against aggro. That's basically why it's in the deck. It gives you a little bit of extra early game punch. Now, the alternative to this is Printha, which, if we'd known how many other mid-rangey decks were actually going to be around, we expected a little bit of a faster setup. Not that it actually mattered, but we did expect a little bit of a faster setup. And I would have been running Printhas if I'd known that. It was going to be more mid-rangey. Now, Uska did come up with this list, although he didn't end up playing it, which was kind of funny. I think he played Mono Dominion, which was the deck he did well on ladder. Like, I think he qualified using Mono Dominion, like an aggro deck with Minotaurs. So, yeah, he ended up playing that, but I just preferred these versions. And I think kreur was playing something similar to this as well. So that's the first deck. Now, on to the second one. Now, there's a bit of story behind this. This is Angels. Now, we had to make the decision between Angels and kreur. They were both performing really, really well. And it was down to the third deck, which we'll get to. But, yeah, it was down to the third deck which one we'd run, because we need to be able to run 3 decks that were pretty good against other creature decks. That was the strategy. So, Angels have been around for a very, very long time, and they got a whole bunch of Wisdom-based support. And as it turns out, Valosworn Incarnate is so insane it doesn't even matter. Yeah, Valosworn, Word of Grace are enough reason to run mono. No joke. It's like the entire reason to run mono, and it works. There's actually, in the finals, I drew 4 Valosworns. Yes, 4. I've never drawn 4 Valosworns before, ever. And I ended up with 7 aspects at one point. 1 mana, 7 sevens. It was ridiculous. That is one of the stupidest games I've ever played. 1 mana, 7 sevens. They were just absurd. So yeah, Valosworn Incarnate is completely broken and is completely overpowered as a 1-drop. And is the reason why Mono Order even functions. Like, Mono Order is, it's kind of sketchy. But Valosworn is just not a fair card. Like, it's just not a fair 1-drop. It just isn't. It never has been, and it's always been the reason to run mono because it's so powerful. Like, I think Spoiled Aristocrat's good. Nice 3-1. Valosworn's usually a 3-3 by turn 4, and it gets bigger in some cases. You end up with 4-4 Valosworns. You can actually instill them later. And, I mean, the biggest I've ever had was 7-7, which was in my final game against Powell, and they just get out of control. And Valosworn even received a bit of a buff because of Soul Projection. This is the new card. Soul Projection was quite considerably buffed in the previous patch. Let's just say it was doubled in effectiveness, and in practical effectiveness it went from being completely useless to incredibly good, because it's a bit of a threshold thing when it comes to distribute. So basically it is a functional AoE now. And the reason I said Valosworn got a massive buff is because you can go Valosworn Soul Projection for 8 for like 3 mana because you have 4 levels. And I did actually do that in one of my games, I think. I went Valosworn Soul Projection for 8 and it swung the game. I was so far behind and it just turned out that that let me clear the board. And once the board's clear, I mean, nothing really beats Angels on a card-for-card basis outside of Cataclysm decks, pretty much. So Soul Projection was incredibly good there against kreur. And in general, the card is just very, very powerful nowadays, and I really, really like it. Only running 2 because it's a bit awkward, and you only actually need 1. You only need 1 in a game, so 2 Soul Projection was good enough. So very, very nice card now. Basically an AoE in order, which is always appreciated. Now, as for the rest of the setup, the only other new card in the deck was Gomor. Now, I might as well mention, this was Kreur's list. Kreur was the angel guy. But, yeah, 2 Gomor. Now, Gomor is your extra set of beaters in the mid-game, which is always nice. You got Guardian already. Guardian's better than Gomor, but Gomor is actually quite nice. I mean, I have gone full 4 speed. I've gone 5/8 before. I haven't used Lifebound that much, but that's not because it's a bad mode. That's because Antriel often comes down after this, because you often play this when you have 4 levels, 3 mana sometimes. So yeah, Antriel can come down afterwards and give it Lifebound. Anyway, but the HP mode is incredible against stuff like Rage, and the speed is just absurd sometimes. Getting a 5/4/4 speed is just ridiculous. And you can get 5/6 3 speed as well. That's also really strong. The only problem with Gomor, the only one, is that his effects lag behind. Basically, because you have to choose end of turn, which is a bonus by the way instead of start of turn, but because you have to choose end of turn, it means that you'll set up Gomor's abilities for the current board state, and then your opponent can like do a bunch of stuff, and then suddenly your Gomor can't do anything because of the way the board states change. Like, for instance, if you go Gomor, double HP, because your opponent has like, I don't know, 3 2-speed guys, and then they go double CFC, attack you for 6, and then suddenly you go to Gomor, and you don't have Lifebound, and you can kill one of his guys, but you're probably dead, and you don't have any speed. So yeah, Gomor does have a weird like lag on his effect, but that's more of a balancing thing than anything else. He'd be completely broken if that didn't work that way. So yeah, Gomor is really, really good. He's also really nice for soul projection now, because that's a 10 AoE. That's usually enough to clear any board. So yeah, Gomor, pretty solid. The beat stick. Now, as for the rest of the deck, it's pretty much just standard Angels. I mean, I'll go over each card again, but the deck hasn't changed an awful lot. So we've got Relic Guard is back in the deck. That's mostly to stop early aggro from stuff like zombies and also from Rage, because the 0/3 3 speed is really awkward to deal with. So yeah, Relic Guard's back. Keep in mind we were banning Dominion. Sunblessed Priest, solid 2-drop, Lifebound, you gain a bit of life back, which helps for the life gain win condition that you can get off Word of Grace and Antriel. So Sunblessed Priest is also solid. Word of Grace is, okay, it's completely overpowered actually in situations like this. Word of Grace is the kind of card where if you draw 3 in one game, you actually just win. It's a really strange card in that regard. And it also is the reason why counting cards using Divine Offering is really important. It works with the hero power from Advanced Alexa and also from Word of Grace, where you'll gain like 8 or 10 life off this thing and actually just randomly win the game. It does happen a lot, and I would not underestimate it. And it's one of the reasons why Angels has, at minimum, like a 40% win rate against anything, because there are just games where you go, like you're going second, and you go like Sunblessed Priest, gain like 6 life there, they take over the board. And then like 2 turns later, you've stalled out the board a bit, and then 2 turns later, you're just like, Word of Grace, gain 12, win. And it actually happens. It does happen. And it's one of the reasons why the deck just randomly wins against control sometimes, even though Mind Extortion can help stop that from happening. So yeah, Mind Extortion is incredibly necessary against Angels because of Word of Grace. It's very, very rough. So anyway, on to Angel Blessed Knight, the ramp spell in the deck. Ramp creature. I actually really like the design of Angel Blessed Knight for what it's worth. So yeah, now the Knight and Priest tribals do come up. The Knight is the more important one because of Namir, but the Priest does come up because Namir gains some life off of the Angel Blessed Knight. But what this guy basically allows you to do is go Angel Blessed Knight into Gomor or Guardian of the Faithful, and he's just really nice. Also, the extra levels you can use for Incarnate and also for Word of Grace, so even if you play them later and go up to like 6 levels, it doesn't matter. So yeah, Angel Blessed Knight, very, very good in this deck. Besides that, we've got CFC, the staple order card. 2/2, 3 speed is already good enough, and then you got that ability, which lets you just turn trades into very favorable attacks, and because you need even more bang for your buck when it comes to individual order cards, you can always retreat CFC to the support line if they try and take him out. So yeah, always watch about CFC. It's a really, really tricky card to handle sometimes. Also, the Knight subtype comes up with Namir. One Ray. It's a Kreur deck. Kreur loves his one-offs. He really, really does. He loves his one-offs. However, there's a bit of a funny story with this. Now, one of the reasons he runs one-off spells that he's kind of like saying, well, I might need this, probably won't, but I might need it. And one of the reasons he does this is because of Spellwarden. He has talked to this about, he's talked to me about this before, and I'm like, well, okay, that might come up. In Game 3 of the finals, Powell played a Spellwarden, looked at my deck, and took the Ray of Righteousness, and then like did some weird trades so that he didn't have to sacrifice a Spellwarden, because he thought I had a Ray in hand and I could kill him. But I didn't. It was the only Ray in the entire deck. Yeah, that was an interesting situation. So it actually does come up. So yeah, one ray. But it actually does come up. Because if they see one ray, they'll expect a second one in your hand, because most people play two. So yeah, one ray does mess with some people. I actually never played a ray over the entire tournament, but my teammates did. So on to Namir. Mentioned him a few times. Namir offers possibly one of the single most obnoxious board state buffs in the entire game. The life gain is incremental, but the 3/3/3 speed is so good as a body, and also that ability is incredibly annoying. It just allows you to dominate combat. Now, it does mean you have to have mana open for this guy pretty much permanently, but once you do, it becomes very difficult to beat an Namir with a creature deck outside of just direct removal. And that's one of the reasons why Angels is so good against creature decks and was so good at this tournament, pretty much. It's amazing against creature decks, and Namir is one of those reasons. It just never goes quietly when it comes to trading. I mean, you basically have to have removal, or it just will completely destroy you. And it has to be very specific removal, actually. It needs to basically be Rage removal with Fireball or Fire Blast. And Consume Spirit's the other one that does it. So yeah, Namir, very, very powerful card. That buff, the most I've ever buffed something for was 4, but that's pretty uncommon. You've got the 3 Knights in the deck, Namir himself, and then you've got CFC and Angel Blessed Knight. So you can pretty frequently get +2/+2, sometimes +3/+3 off the Namir. +2/+2 comes up a lot because of Instill. But anyway, Guardian of the Faithful, one of the 4 of the 8 angels in this deck. Guardian basically locks your opponent's board down in some situations. That ability is both a very, very good upside and a very annoying downside sometimes, where your opponent will have 3 zombies and will attack, and then the Guardian dies. However, it also means your opponent can't just attack with 20 zombies if they've got Flesh Sculptor, or they'll lose everything. And it locks your opponent out from attacking with 3 creatures at once in some situations, and a 3/4/3 speed is incredible if it has flying. It's just insane. Now, getting off of the hero power is more like drawing a card than anything else, because the cost is the same. But Guardian is a very, very powerful card, and it's one of the reasons why it's so difficult to actually kill an Angels player. There's so many mechanics in the deck that just make it very, very difficult to actually end the game. So yeah, Guardian's one of the major punches this deck gets in the late game. The other one's Antriel. Now, Antriel's a 4 level, 4 mana legendary creature. One of the only decks that will ever do that. The reason is because you want to hit off the hero power. Now, Antriel is extremely strong. Antriel's varied from being kind of okay to being very, very good, depending on the situation. The reason is because of Helm. Helm completely annihilates you. And the other problems were, back when Control was using Advanced Despina, it was just laughable. They would get Spellwardens out of your deck, they would get Antriels out of your deck, and you just could not win. So yeah, Antriel was quite bad then, but nowadays, a lot of creature decks around. Again, you can ban Control. Lots of creature decks. 6/6 is incredibly hard to handle, especially with flying, so you can't just attack it. And Lifebound on everything essentially allows you to have unblockable damage in a lot of cases, because they can't chump block your guys as efficiently, because you will get some damage through at some point, which turns into life, which gets you to your secondary win condition. So yeah, Antriel is an incredibly powerful creature, and you really need 8 angels for the hero power to work ever, pretty much. It's not that common for it to hit in the first place in this deck. So yeah, Antriel, very, very powerful, and you really do need the 8 angels just to make the hero power function. Now, the last card in the deck, unless I missed something, is Instill Life. Instill Life is mostly bringing back Namir and CFC. And also Valisworn. So yeah, those are the 3. CFC helps with some combat boosts. Valisworn is your stat choice, and Namir is just an all-round guy. Basically, you can't reanimate 2 Namirs at once, so you need to have a second choice there. CFC is quite nice because you can actually give something +3/+3/+1 in one turn with Namir's ability as well. You get the CFC, and then you get the Namir double usage. But Valisworn also comes back as a 4/4 later, or even 5/5 if you have an Angel Blessed in play in some situations. So yeah, Instill, very, very powerful, and kind of rounds out to the theme of this, where Mono Order has basically no card draw. I mean, you've got Advanced Alexa, which sometimes draws a card, but in general, the individual card power level is so high that you kind of make up for the lack of draw. So anyway, That's 2 decks down, 20 minutes in. So for the third deck, we were in a bit of a strange situation. Now, we were thinking of zombies. We decided against it. I remember Powell ended up playing zombies and he got second place, so yeah, it was definitely a valid choice. But we were thinking about zombies, but we weren't sold on it. We were thinking about rage, but we weren't sold on it. And we were a bit stuck because we couldn't play. We didn't want to play zombies or rage, so we couldn't play Care Bears. So you're thinking, okay, so we're playing angels, and that opens up green. Is there a good deck in corruption, rage, and nature between them? Which was tricky because hate bears wasn't really a thing. So we had a bit of testing with rage bears. That didn't turn out too well. And the other one was like we had some downtime, and I was just asked, well, can you make a hate bears deck that works? I'm like, I don't know. This is gonna be rough. Because landslide. And I managed it. I actually managed to make a hate bears deck that works. It looks completely different to any previous hate bears deck I've ever made, though. Yeah, this is completely different to the other builds. The other builds were corruption starts. They were more like mid-range control decks. This is an aggro deck. This is a full aggro deck. This is like Care Bears, basically. It's basically Care Bears with corruption instead. In fact, like this, just if you just scan this list, you've got the 1 spell and then the 8 creatures, and the rest is all nature cards. If we go onto my old Care Bears list that I played last season, 8 creatures, the spell, and then all the same stuff. So it is basically the same deck, but with corruption. And it worked. Why does it work? Well, basically, the reason is because you got Flesh Sculptor, which can make creature matchups really miserable, and Mesmerizing Spirit helps a lot in the mirror, and so does Fume. Well, I say mirror, against other bears. So against Care Bears, Mesmerizing Spirit, Flesh Sculptor, and Fumes are pretty much superior to CFC, Elite Vanguard, and Instill Life. Simply because the game's getting a bit grindy, and those really, really help. Also, the new additions to these decks is Moonlight Patrol, which gives you a flying 3-speed threat that can also get a free kill on a 2-2, and you have Fumes for Moonlight Patrol, but they do not, which means that your Moonlight Patrol will get a free kill, and then your upper card, and you've got Mesmerizing Spirit, so they're down cards, and you get this sort of snowball-y situation. If you're slightly ahead in the early game with Hate Bears, you just instantly win against Care Bears. So, yeah. So Moonlight Patrol definitely swung that around a bit. Now, as for the rest of the deck, it is pretty much the Care Bears shell. Now, I have done a deck tech on Care Bears recently, but I'll just go over this again. So what you want to do is you got Call of Yalaya to fetch a nature combo piece that you just don't have for your early game. So you use Call of Yalaya to fetch whatever you don't have. What are you looking for? Well, you want a Summoner Druid, you want 1 Summoner Druid, and then you want, if you're going first, then you want 2 nature 2-drops. Now, I'm not running Death Trap in this deck, but mostly because we were banning control. But yeah, you've got your 4 Elf Warrior, 2/2/3 speed. You've got your Silver Fang, 2/2/3 speed with an added bonus that doesn't come up that much, but it's legendary. That's why there's only 2 of them. And these are your main early attackers. They allow you to snipe around the board, and they're incredibly good with Gurkha Tribe, which we'll get to, which buffs it up. And then you just get to snipe around the board and take full board control in the early game. 3 speed is a huge asset. So yeah, you got your 6 3-speed threats there in the early game, and then your other 2-drop is the Gurkha Tribe Shaman. Now the Gurkha Tribe Shaman is mostly a Might Emblem in this deck. I have played him out as a 2-1, but you don't really want to do that sometimes. But yeah, he is mostly a Might Emblem that helps against removal, and you can put him under a 3-speed guy, and then that 3-speed guy becomes an absolute monster and just terrorizes the entire board. You can also tutor for him with Call of Yalaya, which is just insane sometimes. Sometimes you'll go turn 2, Summoner Druid, and then like Elf Warrior, and then turn 3 you go Call of Yalaya, get a second Gurkha, and then just go Gurkha, 4/4/3 speed attack. And it's like, what deals with that? Nothing, pretty much. And once they remove that card, you get your Shamans back on board. So, very, very powerful card, and it was a staple in Care Bears. And here it's even more important because you don't have CFC as your other method of buffing. So yeah, that's your early game. Then you get onto your turn 3 plays, which is your second Summoner Druid activation if you're going first. If you're going second, you usually go Summoner Druid, and then say Elf Warrior on turn 1 off Spark, and then on turn 2 you go for another 2 nature drops, which is what you want to be doing if you're going second. That's the absolute nut draw early game if you're going second. But if you're going first, your second Summoner Druid turn will involve some 3-drops, and you've got some nice options. You've got Moonlight Patrol, only 2 Moonlights because they're very, very good against creature decks in particular, and you can use Call to get them. But we opted for more Unicorns, mostly because Burning Rage. Yeah, Burning Rage is the reason you want Unicorn, and it's the reason I've got 3. Because you actually need multiple Unicorns, and you want to draw one and then call for one, basically. So, yeah, you need 2 Unicorns, pretty much. You can sometimes win off 1, but you need Unicorn almost on curve against Burning Rage. And if you go 2 Unicorns against Burning Rage, the game's done and dusted. Like, the game's actually over. They have no draw, you have discard, and you've also got some heavy punch that you can throw against the Advanced Ash ability. So yeah, Unicorn is an amazing asset against Burning Rage, and we're expecting some people to play it. So yeah, that's why there's 3 Unicorn, 2 Moonlight, even though Moonlight Patrol is the technically better card. It was a tech choice. So the Corruption drops also come up here in that slot where you've got Flesh Sculptor, the card that I think a lot of people have like PTSD from. Yeah, this thing in multiples is not a fair situation ever. It's just ridiculous. It turns all of your creatures into massive amounts of zombies, and you can get 2 down on turn 3 sometimes off a Summoner Druid, and then the game's just over. Like, there's nothing anyone can do at that point. And it's one of the reasons why this deck actually beats Control. Because Bears, if you think about it, Bears always applied massive pressure to Control early, but they died to the first Cataclysm, right? Or more accurately, the second one. The first one stalled them out, the second one actually won the game. Flesh Sculptor, you play Flesh Sculptor just before the Cataclysm turns, and then you say to your opponent, so, I've got 10 attack in play. If you Cataclysm me, I'll have 8. And yeah, you just win off that. So yeah, Flesh Sculptor is incredibly good against Control, and in general is just a very, very powerful card, and once you get multiples down, the game just gets ridiculous. And against decks that don't have a lot of removal, Flesh Sculptor is just silly. So yeah, very, very powerful card there. Mesmerizing Spirit, the other reason to run Corruption pretty much, along with the removal options. Mesmerizing Spirit is a very innocuous card, it always has been. It's like, you look at it and it's like 2-1, 2 speed. Oh, it's got discard effect, that's nice. And then there's flying. Everyone underestimates flying, always. It's like the most underestimated mechanic in the entire game, and flying is very, very good. It allows you to have a back row target for Gurko in some situations, and just mess with his attacks in the case of lower speed decks. As in the stat speed, not as in terms of how fast they can actually play and kill you. So yeah, the discard comes up a lot against the other mid-range decks the most, especially Bears, because you can kind of neuter their reverences with Mesmerizing Spirit, and also against Crazy Rage, you can basically discard the last 2 cards in their hand, and then suddenly they have no burn left, and then you win the game. I have tornadoed my own Mesmerizing a few times to get extra discards, and that definitely does come up. So yeah, Mesmerizing Spirit, bit innocuous, but universally powerful in pretty much every Corruption deck, give or take. So once you get past, that's the early mid-game creature suite. After that, you've got your big heavy hitter, the Ancient Treant. Now, the Ancient Treant, you don't have Instill Life for this Ancient Treant, like you do in Bears, but still very, very good. Off Reverence, you can play it for 1 mana, and you can call a Violaya for it, and this is how you beat Rage and Angels, and it just gives you so much punch. And because you're ahead in the early game, you can afford to play an Ancient Treant, whereas in the Corruption version, you're playing a more defensive role, which means you play a Treant and it doesn't really do much, which is what I found in the previous version of Bears. But this is a very, very, I mean not Bears, of hatebears, but this is a very, very different setup. And that's why Ancient Treant works in the green openings and not in the Corruption openings. So yeah, Treant, very, very powerful, locks down all of the stuff you can't normally deal with, and it's just a pain in the neck to deal with on your opponent's side. Can't use CFC on this like you can in Bears or Instill, so it is weaker in this deck, but still very, very powerful. Now, in terms of the spells, 8 spells, because, well, okay, 10, but Call of Violaya turns into a creature. Almost every creature in the deck is tutorable. The only stuff that isn't is Flesh Sculptor and Mesmerizing. So the other spells are 4 Tornado and 4 Fumes. 4 Tornado you kind of have to run now because you don't have Landslide, so you need the 4 Bounce. I mean, before it was like 2 Tornado and then 4 Landslide, so you don't have as much bounce as you used to, but you just need the bounce. You definitely need the bounce, and Tornado has a bit of utility where you can bounce your own guys sometimes, versus Helm, or just to recycle things like Mesmerizing Spirit. But in general, this is used for tempoing your opponent out against... I mean, like, if they're trying to attack your Treants, for instance, to stop it from attacking, you can actually bounce one of their guys, and even if they replay it immediately, the Treant gets the attack, which means that creature is now locked down permanently, pretty much. So, Tornado Outbreak, very, very powerful in a Treant deck, and because you got the Nature Star, it's all about tempo, and Tornado is pretty much the best tempo card in the game. Fumes, reliable, 1-mana removal. It's one of the reasons to run Corruption. It just deals with all the early stuff that you have a bit of issues with, and it lets you get early board position. And because you've got a lot of intrinsic draw with Reverence, Fumes' problem where it can't deal with any big things without going massively down on card advantage isn't a problem. So yeah, Fumes, very, very powerful card, one of the best Corruption cards in the entire game, and is definitely one of the reasons to run Hatebears in full. Now, you don't have Vermin, so you have a few issues dealing with 3 HP stuff, but then you got Ancient Treant to maybe hopefully just lock down the 3 HP stuff on the back row specifically. So yeah, that's the lineup we ran. Took 30 minutes to talk through every single deck, 10 minutes a deck. Yeah, anyway. So yeah, we ran Implants and Angels and Hatebears. Now, overall, it performed very, very well. Angels was the best performing deck, from what I can tell. I don't think I lost a game with Angels. No, I don't think I did. I think it was banned in 2 of my matches. Yeah, Angels was banned in 2 of my matches, and the other 2 it won both games. So yeah, Angels was really, really good. Hatebears, I think I lost 1 game with against Powell, and outside of that, the deck was very, very good and performed extremely well. So I was also happy with Hatebears in general, and Implants felt a little bit rough around the edges, but in general the deck just performed well. I don't think this is the build that I would have run in hindsight. I would have run some Print House instead, but we were expecting a bit more Rage. So yeah, this is teched for Rage, and if I'd known how many Angel techs would be around, I would have just not been playing Golems, and I would have been playing Print House instead. So yeah, there's a suggestion. If Angels is everywhere, run Print House instead of Golem. That's basically what I've got to say about that. And also run Soul Flames instead of Assassinate, I guess. Actually, no, if you have multiple removal spells, it's good against Spellwarden. Now, in terms of weird choices in previous decks, just one to mention in Angels, no Spellwarden. The reason is Ban Dominion, which means we didn't need to get rid of Cataclysm or Assassinate or Soul Flames or anything like that. So yeah, we weren't playing Spellwarden. Now, Spellwarden is still very, very good against stuff like Tornado, but against Rage, it's kind of redundant because they have so many burn spells, and they even have hero powers that take out Spellwarden. So it wasn't good against Rage at all. And against some of the other decks, it was just like, it was pretty miserable. I mean, the games I played against Powell where he had Spellwarden was really good. Okay, it was really good in one of those games, not so much in the other. But Spellwarden in general was really, really good against Hatebears. However, that matchup is already slightly Angels favored, so I don't know how much of a difference it did make compared to some of the other matchups. So it's one of those worth testing, but because we could ban Dominion, it wasn't worth running. For a ladder version, it's probably worth running, and depending on how the meta goes, you may just want to cut Relic Guards entirely and play Spellwardens instead if there's not a lot of Rage running around, for instance. So anyway, I think that's about it as far as the tournament report goes. It did go very, very well. As I said, I ended up getting the first place. And overall, I'm pretty happy with all the decks. I don't think all the lists are perfect by any means. I'll link all the lists in the description. But yeah, take them with a bit of a grain of salt because these were Conquest lists. And also, Conquest lists don't fully translate into Ranked. I have said this before. Conquest lists do not fully translate into Ranked. You do need to mess around with the numbers a little bit to adjust to a metagame that you can expect on Ladder compared to a metagame you can expect in Conquest. Because having a ban means you can just tech your decks completely differently, expecting other matchups. And that's definitely a very, very important thing when it comes to ban-based formats. So anyway, thank you all for watching. If you like the content, please subscribe. If you have any feedback or want to ask me any questions, put it in the comment section below. If you want to support the channel directly, there is a link to my Patreon in the description, along with a code for the Disquisitive Spirit Card Back that you can see in the little slot at the top there for new players. But as for now, it's been Jotto, signing off.